Yeah.
Okay, the meeting's now going live.
Thanks, Nigel.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Gloucestershire Police and Crime panel meeting. My name's Andrea Clark and I'm clerk to the panel. The first order of business today is to elect a chairperson. So the first thing I'm going to do, therefore, is ask for a nomination from panel members, please. Councillor Steve Robinson, who are you nominating?
Yes, thank you, Andrea. I'd like to nominate Colin Hay as chair, please.
And do I have a seconder for that?
Yes, I'll second Colin.
Who is that?
Ray Brassington.
Thank you, Ray. Are there any other nominations? No? Okay, over to you then, Colin.
To unmute, hadn't I? Okay, well, welcome everyone. And there's just a couple of things I think I ought to say. Some of you will have been in virtual meetings. They do take quite a bit of time. So if we can keep contributions fairly succinct, not trying to stop people from making contributions, but keep it as succinct as possible. And if we can steer clear of the anecdotes, that would be probably helpful in these sorts of meetings. I've just got to get the agenda up. Can't remember what the first item is. So
you need to elect a vice chair.
A vice chair. Thank you. Yes, obviously. So I would personally like to nominate Steve Robinson, if that's okay. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
So that's Ray seconding. Any other nominations for vice chair? I can't see a hand up, so I take it, Stephen, you are vice chair again for this next year.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
From memory, is it minutes next?
No, it's apologies for absence, and we have apologies from Councillor Dave Norman, and we have Councillor Andrew Miller substituting for Dave.
Thank you.
Now it's declarations of interest.
Now declarations of interest. I'll get the agenda up on my second screen. So any declarations of interest? Can't see any hands. Thank you. And now the minutes of the last meeting, if people have had a chance to read those, can we? Johnny?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think this might be the right point to ask the question. In the last meeting, we discussed the constabulary receiving another 152 officers over the next 3 years. I just wanted to ask the Commissioner, given that so much has changed since then, whether or not we're still on course for that. I do recognise that is referenced in the Police and the Commissioner's annual report, which we'll get to later. But there's a discrepancy and speculation not the full quote over 3 years. And also, I know when we get to the report, we're not supposed to be asking questions about the contents of it, if you see what I mean. So I thought this would be an appropriate moment to ask whether or not we actually are on course.
I think it would be reasonable to ask then, Johnny. We'll just take that.
Okay.
All right. So we're on the minutes and the accuracy of the minutes. Has anyone got any comment on that? I think that's a no. Oh, sorry, there was another hand. Ray, did you want to say something? No. Ray, when people raise their hand, by the way, it's one thing that I forgot to say. Could you try to go back to that participants thing? And then if you've got your hand raised, at the bottom it will say lower hand. If you could lower the hand, that would be helpful. I've had no indication that anyone wants to challenge the minutes, so I'm going to assume they're okay, and I'll get those signed however we do that virtually. We then go on to Where am I? No. Sorry. Next item, Andrea. I can't hear anything.
Sorry, I hadn't unmuted myself. I do apologise.
That's all right. I thought it was
No.
me.
COVID-19 lessons learned and policing the new normal.
So I think at that point it's over to Martin and Rob. Is that right? Is Martin and Rod, are you unmute or whatever?
They are unmuted, Colin, but we're not hearing them.
Okay.
We were a minute ago, so I don't know what's changed.
Give them a minute.
Martin, we're not hearing you.
I think I'm going to have to leave. You're all frozen. I'm only getting broken up stuff, I'm afraid. I don't know if you can hear me now.
We can see you.
It's simply not working for me, I'm afraid. You're all frozen and I'm not getting continuous sentences at all. Sorry. I'm going to try a better system. I'm going to leave the meeting and just try and join in a minute on another line.
Yeah,
Okay.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea, Martin. So,
Sorry about that, Martin.
So Martin Searle is the one we can't hear.
Yeah.
He's let's see what's going. Let's see if the ICT guy can get the mic running.
I've got the audio on there.
We can see them without a problem. It's just the mic's not working.
Make the button on that and just use that.
Okay, for the benefit of the members of the public, if I could explain, we seem to be having some technical difficulties with the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner, which we are trying to resolve.
Oh, shit, it's gone again. She said there's a problem. Oh, she's just saying.
In the meantime, if everybody else could remain on mute, that would be helpful.
You want to show them your face? Make sure they know you're in.
Colette, can you mute? So we can hear everything. Sorry.
I'm sorry. You can? All right.
Yeah, that's it. Got it. You got it. We're just hopefully we'll be up and running again at the Sabrina Centre.
Colin.
Right. Go on, Ray.
Yeah, I was just saying. Well, we've got a waiting at the moment.
Hello, Martin.
Yeah.
No. We can see you all right, but we can't hear you.
I'm just wondering, Colin, where the solution here could be a simple one, in as much as we didn't have any problems with Richard Bradley's laptop, because all the rest of you are on devices without any issues. What we could do is we could actually get Richard to log onto his laptop, and then that could be passed around the room, and then that, you know, because I'm conscious everyone else is waiting and they're not having the same technical difficulties. So, and I know Richard Bradley's laptop, because we tested it earlier, works fine. Can we, Richard, are you there? Do you want to, should we try and do that? Are you hearing us at the Sabrina Centre? Can you indicate? We don't know whether we can see you, but we can't hear anything. I don't think they can hear us at all. Let me see if I can, I'll see if I can talk to Richard Bradley on his mobile. Bear with me.
I was muted then. Should we take 5 minutes adjournment, Andrea? Yeah. And then we can try it. You're muted, Andrea.
So if everybody could remember to mute, and perhaps if you turn your screens off as well whilst we're on the 5-minute adjournment, because we'll be still live streaming.
Okay. So we'll come back at past.
Colin, can I just say something? Ray here.
It's been in on one laptop. Okay. All right. Cheers. All right. Okay. All right. Bye. I don't know.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi. It's Craig Holden. Can you hear us? Okay.
Yeah. Did you want to turn your video on as well?
Yeah, I do. It is on. It's just the wrong camera at the moment. Hang on 2 seconds.
Yeah, it's all right. Yeah.
Bear with me.
Oh, Craig. All right, Simon.
Hello all.
So I think the easiest solution is for you to pass your laptop to whoever is speaking at the time. Is that okay?
I've got a large speaker, so you should be able to hear us. I'll put my laptop at the front of the room, and you should.
Yeah, go on. Yeah, put it there. I see where Martin sat, because Martin, I think, is going to speak first. Let's have a. So if Martin sits down, let's see where we are.
Okay.
We only see a bit of Martin at the moment.
Let's have it so it comes this way.
Yeah, push it over a bit. That's fine. Martin's right in the middle of the shot now, and we can hear you, Martin. So Martin, do you want to reconvene the meeting then?
Okay, so just give us a couple of seconds to get ourselves organised.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine, Martin. Tell us when you're ready.
Chris is going to sit next to me over there, so he may assist with the movement of the camera.
That's working perfectly, Martin. That is now. No problem at all.
Okay, wonderful. Only 14 minutes late. We'll be after the Formula 1 Grand Prix, isn't it? Remarkable. Off
you go then, Martin.
Okay.
Well, you waiting for Chris?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Colin, are we starting the meeting now? Are we officially starting now or not?
I did say past.
Yeah,
okay. It might take longer.
So where we've got to, Martin, just so you know, you might not have heard it. So Colin's been elected as chair.
Mm-hmm.
Steve Robinson is vice chair. So this is the first part of the meeting proper.
Mm-hmm.
So are you ready to? Is Chris there? Is he comfortable?
Yeah, I think so. Just introduce me again for the public's sake, so they know who they're talking to and what I'm going to talk about.
So I'll hand over to Colin to introduce the item.
That will be
all
brief.
Right. Okay, Colin.
Okay, we'll start again. So, Martin, the name under your face is Craig Holden, of course, but Martin Searle, Police and Crime Commissioner. And in the background there, we have Rob Hanson, the Chief Constable. If you'd like to kick off the report, there's a couple of people leaving early. We've had your report, but if you'd like to just introduce it and point out some of the highlights, that would be useful. Thank you.
By all means. And first of all, congratulations, Colin, on your re-election, and to Steve as the Vice Chair. It's good to see that. And first of all, we're all here together. I'm joined by the Chief Constable, Rod Hanson, who will be part of my team here today. ACC Craig Holden is also here, and my Chief Executive, Richard Bradley. Out of camera sight, trying to make sure this all works, is Chris Briley, my deputy. So thanks very much. Good to be back and talking to you again. First of all, we're down here at the Sabrina Centre, which is our new training centre and our conference facility. The IT does work remarkably well, apart from Conan, so I'm not quite sure how that happened or why it happened, but there we are. During COVID-19, it's been a challenging time for my office and for the constabulary. Let me just start with my office and then move on swiftly to the Chief Constable, who will probably introduce his ACC about how the police responded. First of all, I think we anticipated a lockdown in advance of when it was announced by the Health Secretary or the Prime Minister. So my office virtually went virtual the week before, and it's been working primarily from home very effectively and very industriously for the entire pandemic. A few meetings have been held back at police headquarters and down here at Sabrina, but primarily they've been at home. The IT worked very well, and there's not much to say about that. It's been an extremely busy time. My office has kept business as usual going on. The development of the force is important. We've been discussing matters like the IT, the estates, the welfare of the officers, and I hold at least weekly meetings with the Chief Constable, probably almost daily on some occasions. But more importantly, in a time of crisis, it's right that people like myself give space to the commander, the Chief Constable, to get on with the operational business. And that's what I did from the outset. So to allow him to operationally command the force in one of the most challenging periods we've had, certainly in my lifetime. To do that, I didn't want him to be concerned or overly concerned about the financial situation. Members who've been on the panel for a long time will know we increased our reserve levels to 5%. So that gave us a good buffer to work to. I can't think of anything that was more deserving of dipping into those reserves than the Corona-19 virus. So I think on week one, maybe even during week one, I made £1 million available to the Chief Constable to allow him to do whatever was necessary, whatever he believed necessary to confront the pandemic. And of course, there are checks and balances, but actually I do trust him at that particular time to make the right operational decisions around PPE, around overtime, around new IT, and whatever is needed. We can cover that in more detail if you like. Staff welfare is a key issue for the Chief Constable. He will talk about that if you like him to, but I'm delighted to say the way he dealt with the officers and kept them safe was really quite remarkable. It's been commented on by more than just myself, but many people as well, including the inspectorate who I've spoken to. During that meeting, from my point of view, as a Vice Chair of the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners, I've just been re-elected for another year to hold that role. We arranged meetings with the Policing Minister, the Robert Buckland, the Justice Minister, and other policing ministers to make sure that the national approach was proceeding as we hoped, and we were keeping very much in touch with government to see how that would go as well. Now, I think it's more interesting how the constabulary coped. It was, from my point of view, a very, very difficult time for them. I've often said the NHS have been absolutely remarkable, and we can see what they did on a day-to-day basis. The police and other emergency services had a key role to play as well. And in the early stages of lockdown, you don't make yourself popular by telling somebody on the hottest days of the year, you can't sunbathe in the park, or you can't go here and you can't go there. So they had a very, very difficult job to do with very limited guidance in the very early stages, and that developed. So I think my assessment is overall they conduct themselves with great dignity, great professionalism, and with the public at heart. And the county, I think, has done remarkably well, not just the police, but the other services as well. So I'm going to pass over to the Chief. I'll take any questions you have on any topic. You've seen the report that we had in place. Business is carried on. The business of home to account is carried on, probably even more intense because we could get each other on Skype very quickly and on telephone calls. And I know the Chief will rely to a certain extent on his ACC, Craig Holden, or I'd also like to pay tribute to for really holding this together from the county policing point of view. So I'll pass over to Rod now, physically passing the camera to him, I think, which is not ideal. But there we are. There we go. Thank you.
That's working, Rod. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. That's good.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. I hope you all remain safe and well, and I hope you can hear me okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. I won't speak too long because I think the importance is for Craig to say a few things, if that's agreeable, Chair, and then to take any questions from the panel. But from the outset, we tried to set the style and tone of the policing response to be a very measured and thoughtful one. The guidance became clearer as we moved our way into the pandemic itself. But throughout, we've tried to adopt the 4 E's approach, which was very much around helping to explain the situation, educate people where possible, and use enforcement as the last resort. We can talk about enforcement if you'd like to ask about that. But we've tried very hard to strike the balance between keeping people safe and using powers that should be literally just a last resort. We think we struck the right balance from the feedback that we've been receiving. We tried to message it very regularly through media outlets, including on BBC Radio Gloucestershire, who gave us the space and the opportunity to explain our position to the public and get those key messages across. The well-being of our staff was monitored almost on a 3-hourly basis by Craig and his team. And we set up an early arrangement to make sure that where we could, we kept staff safe so that they could come to work or work from home. If we run out of resources, well, as a service provider, with people at the heart of our service, we would be in trouble, and so would the county. So I'm pleased to say that the early measures adopted by Craig and his team meant that we had good levels of attendance throughout for those that needed to be present, and very high levels of productivity from those that were working from home. So measures like moving the response teams out of their single base virtually overnight by dawn, their inboxes and lockers were moved into 3 different locations, swapping half of teams around so that we could make sure that if somebody got the virus, it didn't spread to too many, and we completely removed a capability in one fell swoop. So that seemed to work well, issuing over 100 laptops, hundreds of laptops at short notice, bringing forward a planned rollout of technology, accelerating it so that those people who were isolating or working from home were able to be productive, were just 2 examples of the measures that Craig and the team put into place. And then, of course, there was a shift away from patrolling the lockdown to one of moving back into the space of rising crime again. And if I may, Chair, if I could just hand over to Craig, I don't want to bounce you around too many names and faces, but Craig did much of that.
Ooh, big feedback.
Craig did much of the head. And if it's agreeable, I'll just pass to Craig for a few headlines from his perspective before we take it back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
That's fine, Craig. Yeah.
Is that okay?
That's perfect. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, good.
Okay, so the slight issue I had by handing my laptop over also went with my notes. So it was obviously a huge challenge, as the Chief's articulated, and I've just pinpointed a few headlines. If at any point you think that I've given you too much detail, then please just cut me short, and I'll try and answer the questions that are most pertinent to yourselves. But in essence, very early on, we took the decision to put together a bespoke command structure, as the police often does in times of significant need. So I was the gold commander. We had a specific silver command suite set up, resources drafted into that. And those resources were in essence trying to look at the future threats and issues that COVID would create for the force, and the likely barriers we needed to overcome. And that was, of course, looking at changes in crime, changes in demand, but also, as the Chief articulated, what's the impact on our resources? To what degree have we got resilience to be able to manage this and provide good service delivery throughout? The other arm to that was I was in control of that command structure, but we also wanted from an early stage to identify somebody who would, as early as possible, be looking at the lessons learnt, the consequence management, the long-term impact of COVID on our organisation, connecting in with the strategic coordinating group and the partnership response. So ACC Richard Berry had taken that role from a very early stage as well, and in fact was undertaking that role on behalf of the South West region. So we were connected into any lessons learned. And of course, the beauty of that being we're now in a really strong position. If we do get a second spike or we get some relapse around the R number in future, we're very well set up to be able to respond to that from the lessons that we've learned to date. In addition to what we're doing as a force, of course, you'll be cited the strategic coordinating group was running, that was set up, a major incident was declared. Sarah Scott, the Director of Public Health, chaired that meeting, but there was a strong synergy between the police and other partners. I was the Deputy Chair of the SCG throughout, and of course, as police, we played an integral part in the tactical coordinating group that sat below that was delivering things such as distribution of public protective equipment across agencies, not just policing, supporting the voluntary sector, looking at all the other aspects the SCG was dealing with. We felt that we were an integral part of that as well, with an ability to respond with our resources to support the broader partnership. In addition to that, I guess one thing that we found the biggest challenge in the early stages was the battle rhythm of information coming from central government, and I think we'd totally understand and appreciate why those announcements were made with little notice, because they would understandably have been anticipating leaks, and those leaks wouldn't have been helpful in terms of public confidence. So reacting to those messages, particularly in the early stages, I recall when the decision came around lockdown, within about 3 hours, we had, in essence, repurposed the force, identified all the resources that were going to be out, engaging in a different way with members of the public. In the space of 3-4 hours, we've had those plans in place and ready to roll out the following day when lockdown started. And that was a huge and considerable challenge. And as part of that, setting the right tone around how we're going to engage with people, to what degree we were going to ultimately move to enforcement, and striking that right balance was really difficult. And I think we did a pretty good job in terms of the message we got to the public, the discretion that we showed, keeping our legitimacy throughout. So that was something we wanted to focus on, because how we adopted this in Gloucestershire from the outset, we saw an opportunity for growing our relationship with the public rather than having a them and us type relationship where the police just went to enforcement and didn't try and utilise the threats first. So we were really keen to. Other things that we did very briefly, loads of reporting structures put in place. Understanding our resilience was one of the biggest issues. So actually at the peak of the pandemic in early April, I think we had at its maximum about 45 to 50 officers and staff off who were displaying symptoms of COVID-19. Whether they had COVID-19 or not, we'll never necessarily know. And we had about 200 staff off self-isolating. But very quickly, as a result of the measures we put in place, that number came down. I think by the end of April, that was down to almost single figures, certainly in the low teens. And then as we went into May, it hit single figures, which I think was remarkable considering the anticipated numbers of people that we thought would, and therefore, and to cater for some of that potential resilience challenge that we had volunteer coordinators bringing in additional special constables. The thousands of hours that the special constabulary put in to support us throughout was absolutely outstanding. And that actually was commitments from ourselves and the Office of the PCC, where we had special constables who were working for us, for our organisation. They were deployed to the front line. Of course, a number of special constables were furloughed in their normal jobs, so they were there able to provide us more support. And the contribution they gave throughout and the resilience that they provided for us was outstanding and really helped us. As the Chief mentioned, we made a very quick decision to move some of our resources to 12-hour shifts. That meant two things. Number one, 12-hour shifts means there's no overlaps between teams, which means that you reduce the potential cross-contamination. But in addition to that, it also provides a broader and stronger resilience of cover. Now, when you make those decisions, you make a significant difference and impact on people's personal lives, so we don't take them lightly. Those were in place for about 2 months before we started to review them, and our staff stepped up without any concerns at any point to be able to work those significantly longer shifts, which of course are difficult. The Chief mentioned our enforcement approach and has said over the entirety of COVID-19, our issuing of fixed penalty notices across the county totalled about, well, just short of 250 fixed penalty notices. The vast majority of those were in relation to people who were travelling into the county. So very broadly, we issued very few tickets in relation to people who were in public open spaces gathered in small crowds. Most of the time, those people, when spoken to, dispersed very quickly. There were, of course, a few, but they were in the minority. The majority of our tickets got issued to people who were travelling into the county. And if you recall, back in April, as we approached the Easter period, we were really concerned about a higher number in the southeast and London of those people travelling to second homes, particularly in the Cotswolds, putting additional pressure on the health economy. And we wanted to make that. So we had a operation that tried to turn people away before they got to the Cotswolds in particular. And that's where the vast majority of our tickets got issued. So people travelling to the county who'd made a conscious decision to try and breach legislation rather than people who were just trying to get out of their houses for some fresh air and a walk in the park. We made the distinction and thought they were very different. Over the entirety of lockdown, we saw an overall drop in crime of approximately 27%. There were actually some big drops in particular crime types. House burglaries went down approximately 70% during the period of time of lockdown, as you'd anticipate, whilst people were in their homes. Shoplifting went down considerably because people's access to stores were less. And of course, people had to queue up outside stores where there would have been security guards monitoring people's entrance. So things such as that did reduce. I know you've asked questions around domestic abuse. We in a very early stage identified that child abuse and domestic abuse were likely to be areas of increased demand. So we repurposed some of our resources. We created a vulnerability car made up of people from school beats, as an example, because they weren't having to work within the schools, and other resources who were specifically going around engaging with high-risk domestic abuse victims and high-risk domestic abuse perpetrators, in essence, making sure they knew that we were, on one hand, there to support them, but on the other hand, we still had a close eye on their activities. And putting that in place, we believe, has had the desired effect of keeping some of the domestic abuse and child abuse offending lower. Now, nationally, there's been an increase. Some of that's been reflected in the county, and I did produce a report through Ruth Greenwood, which I think you've got, and demonstrates that there has been a small increase of domestic abuse across the county, but not perhaps to the same extent that it's existed in other places in the UK. And of course, that's something we continue to monitor. And then finally, just coming towards the end, and I'll take any questions. We did a huge amount of work to make sure that our buildings and our workplaces are secure for people to return to, balancing how people can be as effective as possible working from the home environment, and which of our staff need to come in to add additional value to the public has been difficult. But we've done a huge amount of work to risk assess all our buildings, all of our operations, so that where people are coming back into slightly higher risk environments, the right measures have been put in place to support them to be able to do that. And one of the things that we took the decision to do actually about 3 weeks ago, which has been hugely successful, is antibody testing of our entire workforce. And that's made available for the 3,000 members of our staff and volunteers to enable us to understand whether people have been exposed or not. It's not an exact science, as you can well understand, but also we wanted to do our bit to contribute to the overall data set that the NHS and government had around what might happen in future spikes. So that concludes actually today the antibody testing, and I think we've had somewhere in the region of 1,500 to 2,000 members of staff and family members who've actually taken up that opportunity and have broadly shared their results with us, which has been really helpful. Finally, throughout this, we've had a real eye on making sure that we flex, that actually we don't stay entirely committed to COVID-19, because of course it is a public health issue, and that we at the right time balance our response and purposing staff towards crime and spikes in crime. We always said when the government changed the category from 4 to 3, that would necessitate a review on our part around our command structure. When that happened, we reviewed it, and we've actually stood our bespoke command structure down to signal to the organisation we do need to return to a more business as usual approach. focus more on now the emerging crimes which are taking place post-COVID. And of course, we don't entirely know how all those are starting to pan out, but we've really tried to now refocus the organisation post-COVID, recognising that at any point there's a local lockdown in Gloucestershire, we'll have to respond again and set structures up, or the national lockdown will do the same. But we now understand how to police that environment in a far better way than we did originally. We know that in lockdown, what the immediate impact is on the change in demand on our services, and so I think we're better placed to be able to direct our resources as effectively as possible. We also know what the likelihood is on our people in terms of exposure, how we manage that. And at the early stages, we thought we could lose up to 30–40% of our resources. We're relatively confident that's not likely to be the case in the future from the way we've managed it this time. So a huge amount of work done from, I think, I guess, from the end of February, early March, from the planning, contingency planning, right the way through to transitioning into a more business as usual approach, loads of lessons learned, as you can imagine. And I'm really proud of the way our organisation has responded to that. I'm also really proud of the way the people of Gloucestershire have listened to the messages that we've put out. We were monitoring public sentiment actually throughout to make sure that we got this right. Started to rise as well. That put some additional pressure on us, particularly around legitimacy and our enforcement approach to things. But I was just really proud of the way the public of Gloucestershire responded to our approach, listened to us, engaged with us. And I think we come out of COVID actually in a really positive place in terms of our relationship with the public of Gloucestershire, which was intended would be the case. I'm really happy to take any questions from yourselves, any detail. And so, yeah, very much in your hands for the next few minutes.
Okay. Looking at the list of participants, there's 2 people with their hand raised, but I'm not sure that that's not because they left them up. So I've got Ray and Andrew Miller. And then Brian, I can see your hand. So Brian, do you want to ask your question?
Well, first of all, I would like to congratulate Craig and all his officers for the way they've handled themselves over the recent months. You kept, for the want of a better word, a very low profile, which to me indicates the proficiency and efficiency of the way you've handled things, the public, and you are really you deserve the fact that you can be proud of yourself and all your officers. Well done. But one thing that does concern me, and in particular, is I've heard reports about 101 phone calls taking such a long time to answer, and even to the point where calls where people rang off and gave up because they couldn't make the call. So I wonder if you've learned anything from this, and God forbid, but if it ever happens again, that we can take care of it perhaps a little bit better in that respect. I can understand, having dealt with banks and other businesses, that they were all having the same sort of problem. People at home and self-isolating and that sort of thing. But I wondered if, what your views are on that particular situation. Thank you.
Brian, you've got me just to start off. Thank you very much for those comments, and thank you. Let me just endorse your comments about the professionalism of the chief officer team and the officers. They worked remarkably hard in very difficult conditions, and I'll just add that they are quite tired now, some of them, because none were furloughed. Obviously, they worked tirelessly, and the public again were pretty much compliant throughout. So it's a credit to the county, the officers, and everybody who was involved in that. Picking up your concerns around 101, I think we've been there before, and we'll probably be there again. My office undertook a review of the police control room, completely independent of the force, but with the blessing of the chief, several months ago, and reported back to the Chief Constable and his team on the what we found, some of our findings, and made recommendations. And you're quite right. The 101 calls very often are not answered promptly. Often they are, but there's a fair proportion that aren't answered sufficiently quickly, and quite a lot that drop out. Coincidentally, following our intervention, the inspectorate, HMICFRS, the Commodities Inspectorate, also did a review across the country. And unsurprisingly, but actually quite a compliment to us, and pretty much the same issues that we did, which in summary is two things. First of all, the police, and this is by the Humanities Inspectorate, are overwhelmed by the level of calls that they are now receiving, on 999 in particular, but also on 101. You may not remember, I certainly didn't until it was pointed out to me, that 101 was set up as not just a police emergency number, a non-emergency number, it's set up as a number to divert members of the public for non-emergency matters to the various different agencies that could help them, be that health, be that environment, or what have you. That's how 101 was originally envisaged by the government and how it was set up, put forward by the police. That fell apart very, very quickly in the early parts of austerity. So basically, it was left with the police to manage 101 and all the demand upon it. The inspectorate says, it's not Martin speaking now, even though I do agree with that. The inspectorate said that at the moment, the volume of calls coming into 101 now for the police is unsustainable, and there's a risk that they will be overwhelmed by it. Occasionally, the police are overwhelmed by it, but often it just relates in people having to wait quite a long time. They also pointed out the complexity of the calls that are now received is far in excess of what was ever envisaged. The way they deal with domestic abuse, around missing people, with mental health issues, and so on, so on. It now takes a lot longer to deal with every single call to the satisfaction of the public, and it's going in one direction only, more and more and more. They also pointed out that because of cuts and other reasons, and I make no complaint to other organisations, that the police now receive hundreds of calls which really should be directed towards other agencies, and then they become the signpost to other organisations which aren't available perhaps till the Monday, and we all know that is true, and that's the situation. So that's the first point. They are overwhelmed by the numbers. You know the financial situation. If we double the number of people in the control room, the chief may want to comment on that, it wouldn't necessarily fix it. However, there is good progress being made. There's no doubt improvements can be made, and they will be made, probably by putting some more staff in there, but they're in the control room, they're not on the street, so we have to accept that. And that's a decision that the Chief Constable will make, because he's the operational commander of this force, and I think he'll do that wisely. So I'm not going to predict that there will be some ridiculous target to say they must operate them within a certain minutes, because obviously at different times of day, different demand, what have you. So there's also a suggestion that people are getting tired of ringing 101, so they're dialing 999, and that's inappropriate, and that puts lives at risk. So we've got to do some messaging around that. The second reason the inspector points out, which is one thing that my office pointed out as well, was the complexity and the age of our IT systems within the control rooms. They are probably fit for purpose for 5 to 10 years ago. We need major financial investment within the control rooms, and it is not just my office that has a problem, or Gloucestershire. This is nationwide. I won't call out other constabularies or other PCC's offices, but you get a better 101 service in Gloucester than you do in other parts of the country, and not so good as other parts as well. So it is a very big problem. I'm delighted that Sir Tom Windsor, the inspectorate, has actually recognised it's a very deep problem. We need to improve our IT. That comes with a very high financial cost at a time when we're trying to invest in officers. When we look at how we're going to invest in the next few years, we are absolutely on target to increase by 152 officers if the government puts some money there. But it doesn't leave much money for anything else. So that's one of the challenges going forward. We have to do that. My personal preference, and I know this isn't happening in Gloucestershire, is that the 3 emergency services will work together on their IT in the control rooms and in the emergency services. That's what the government wants us to do. That isn't what is happening in this county. I don't know why, but it's not happening that way. So my plea is that the 3 emergency services, certainly the 2 that were left in the Tri-Service Centre, should combine their efforts around IT regarding emergency services, because then we'd all probably have more to play with. So those are the reasons, Brian. Happy to take further questions, and if you want the Chief to comment on that, I'm sure he'd be more than happy to do so.
Thank you for a very full answer. Thank you.
Chair, Councillor Karen McEwen has raised her hand as well.
Yes.
Karen, can you actually use the system? So you can see the buttons that are on the screen. If you touch the keyboard or you'll touch your iPad screen, you'll see that there's a button that comes up with a person on. And when you touch that, you can actually at the bottom of that raise your hand. So that's when we talk about raising the hand, that's what we mean, not physically doing it, because there are so many people in the meeting. But just so you're aware, Chair, Karen has put her hand up, okay?
Yes, and I noticed that both Ray and Andrew Miller have got hands raised. You told me off yesterday, Andrew, so I'm getting my own back for doing exactly the same thing. If those could be down, that would be great. So, Karen.
Sorry, Colin, my hand was raised because I wanted to speak.
Oh, I beg your pardon then. Do
you want me to go ahead or?
Yeah, go Karen, and then I'll Andrew's next.
Right. I've got there's two questions that I'd really be interested in. The first one was one that I submitted in advance, and I can't quite see whether it's been answered in the report. It's really about the rising crime of cybercrime and some of the stuff around county lines that's been found elsewhere, whether that is a risk to Gloucestershire as well. And the second one is a safeguarding issue. I was working with a very high performing authority on Tuesday in their MASH. And one of the things I did realise that moving a co-located service to a virtual service has incredible challenges, particularly as Gloucestershire has its challenges otherwise. I would just like to be reassured that the multi-agency work within the MASH is working effectively.
Karen, thank you for those questions. I'm going to pass over to ACC Craig Holden, head of operational matters. He'll be much more able to answer than me. But on county lines, we discuss it at a national basis with Kit Malthouse, the policing minister, on a regular basis. There were some advantage of lockdown in as much it was quite hard to operate the county lines with the trains not working, the buses not working. So that was one good thing that probably came out of COVID, but probably one of the very few things. I'll pass on to ACC Craig Holden, who will give you a more comprehensive answer. Thank you, Karen.
Yeah.
Hello, Karen. So firstly, county lines, we have been tracking throughout because we're aware of some of the national risks around county lines and the concerns. And as Martin's articulated, because of some of the restrictions on the transport networks, what we noticed is that actually the county lines activity into Gloucestershire was reduced. What's important for us is to now lockdown has been released to make sure that we are absolutely committed to keeping our intelligence together to understand where the biggest impact is. And of course, throughout lockdown, there was an increase in prices overall because availability at the ports went down, which has pushed prices up, which means some of the risk goes up. So we're tracking that with our intelligence department to make sure where prices go up and therefore the inquisitive crime goes up and risks to people, we're absolutely committed to targeting the offenders in that area. But of course, in addition to that, where young people are being exploited, that we're doing the appropriate safeguarding around those people to make sure that we don't unnecessarily criminalise young people. So county lines, we haven't seen it become as much an issue as it has been elsewhere, but it is something we continue to track and monitor. The question, I think the second question was around safeguarding. I actually had a meeting yesterday with members of the Children's Safeguarding Executive for Gloucestershire, and actually a national meeting where some of these issues were raised around the abilities of a MASH to operate effectively in the virtual space. So Kath Davis, who's our Detective Superintendent, Head of Public Protection Unit, she assures me that during the MASH continue to function. That of course it does bring some challenges because people aren't able to have the same level of conversations when they're making effective decisions, but they are working through the processes around that. And throughout lockdown, there's actually a initial reduction in information coming into the MASH, but I think what we've been bracing ourselves for is post-lockdown and children going back to school and partners from domestic abuse being in a position to report more things, that all of a sudden there would be a huge surge. We haven't seen that surge yet, but we're anticipating yet, and we're trying to build our resources to be able to cope with that surge, which we anticipate could come in the next couple of months. So we continue to meet as a children's safeguarding executive, to that police, children's social care and health to make sure we manage that. We have got, as far as I'm aware, sufficient resources in the MASH to be able to contend with that, but it is something we'll continue to monitor, Karen.
Okay, so what you're telling me, there's probably an assessed need in the county.
We're not sure, and no one's entirely sure, because I think there's a number of hypotheses around what might have happened in lockdown to people who were vulnerable. Of course, a lot of children on plans would have been in school throughout. Now, not all of them. And a lot of people who were in a domestic abuse and coercive controlling relationship as well may not have an opportunity to report. We did see an increase in the calls coming into the domestic abuse call helpline, but that's not necessarily manifested itself in a significant increase in overall reports. We think it might come, and we're tracking to see when that will happen and what our response will be. Our hope is that the interventions that we put in place around the vulnerability card, the additional focus during lockdown on vulnerability, may have reduced some of that unassessed need. But of course, we don't know yet, but we will continue to track it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Okay, Andrew, do you want to?
Yes, thank you very much, Colin. So I'd like to welcome this report. I'd like to particularly welcome the statement on Black Lives Matter. I was quite shocked by the news reports that came in, from the United States, and I think this is a very good statement in relation to Black Lives Matter. So I'd like to show my support for that, please. My main question, I think, was partly answered by the last question. So I was going to ask about county lines and the opportunities that it might afford for the police to have a closer visibility on what was going on when it was more difficult for organised crime to organise effectively. I think that's kind of partly been answered, but as I'm also chair of the Overview Children and Family Overview and Scrutiny, I just wondered if I could ask if there's anything more that the Gloucester County Council Children's Services could do to assist with regards to domestic violence or child abuse or any of those similar activities. Is there anything more that you would be expecting from the authority that I'm a member of? Thank you.
They're very good questions. First of all, can I deal with the Black Lives Matter? And I too was shocked and appalled by the level of violence we saw in the United States, particularly in the manner in which George Floyd was killed. It was abhorrent to me, and the Chief Constable and I discussed that at great length publicly on a webcast to show that to distance ourselves from law enforcement that acted in that way. And thank you. Yes, we did take, as a member of leadership of Gloucestershire, I took a statement to the team there to say, can we all speak as one county, to say that we recognise the inequalities that do still exist within Gloucestershire with our own organisations. And I think within the papers that statement is there. So thank you for associating yourself with that. I think that's what you did, and other panel members may like to do so, because I think on these issues they are tricky, they are complex, but they run very deep. And the more that we speak as one on this matter, the better. So thank you. Thank you for the work you do in the Committee on Children's Services and Domestic Abuse, etc. I'm not exactly familiar with all the work that you do, but I understand it's well grounded. Gloucestershire had an unenviable past on children's services and these issues. It's not always done well. And I think we also have to acknowledge that within the police service, I've acknowledged it wasn't as good as it should have been about 5 years ago. And I think the County Council has accepted the same, but we don't need to revisit that now. The piece of work that I'm endorsing and I'm resourcing is led by Dame Janet Trotter. It's called Child Friendly Gloucestershire. That is very much, has cross-party support, I believe. All the councils are signed up to it, I believe. Really making it crystal clear that Gloucestershire is a county that cares for its children, particularly those in care, is something we must do. So what they could do more than anything else is endorse the work of Child Friendly Gloucestershire, as I will endorse the work that is being carried out by Councillor Richard Boyles to try to improve the children's services within the County Council. So I think on this issue, we must all, again, stand as one for our children, and then that will start to root out some of the domestic abuse, some of the shocking abuse that happens with children, and some of the race issues as well. So thank you for those comments.
Okay, Ray, you seem to have your hand up, and I know you've got to leave quite soon. Do you have a question?
Yes, please. Can I ask Martin? Apologies if you've already covered this, but the sound from the Sabrina Centre keeps breaking up. But the question I want to ask is, have the police received extra funding from a government to cope with a COVID-19 response like the local authorities have? Thank you.
No. First of all, the initial funding was by myself. So we hold 5% reserves in this county. £1 million, about 1% was given to the chief immediately. That has been spent, pretty much all of it, I believe now, and more will be made available if we need it. I've been in calls with Kit Malthouse, the policing minister, and others, and the indication is that they will reimburse us for the PPE equipment, which will run into several £100,000. I think that's a done deal, but it's not actually been done yet. Regarding the other costs, we have collated all our costs that we believe are directly related to COVID-19 under one particular code. They have all been submitted to the Home Office, and I am doubtful we will receive them all back, and probably we shouldn't receive them all back because we have some reserves for these kind of matters, but it's still to be determined, and the financial situation is going to be tricky for all of us, councils, everybody going forward. So we've had nothing back yet, an indication we will have the cost of PPE. I don't know exactly how much, let's say it's a few £100,000, and the rest may or may not come. Probably not.
Okay, Ray.
Very much, and apologies, I have to leave now.
Okay, well, have a good holiday. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
The next person I've got down is Lorraine. Saw your hand up.
Thank you, Chairman. This question is for Martin mainly, but Rod might be able to help with that as well. Regarding your IT situation and upgrading, what sort of figures are you looking at to enable that, please?
Okay, it's a very good question. I could tell you exactly after the meeting. Well, it depends what we do. I think it runs into about £7 million potentially to get there. And we're not an outlier in this situation. We're really not. IT is very expensive. I would like to see some collaboration, not just within the county, but within other forces as well. So it would be £7 million, probably between 5 and 7 to get there. We can do it in stages. We'll have to do it that way. The really big issue we're waiting for is the new replacement for our radio system, which isn't causing a major problem at the moment. We're holding, I think it's £5 million in reserve for that. It's well overdue. That's a Home Office project, but it'll be funded by the delivery of it, the actual operationalisation will be funded by the forces. That's was meant to come out this year or last year, I believe, Chief. It's still not been delivered to us yet. So that'll be another major impact. And we are far from convinced that £5 million will cover that. It will be replacing all our radios, a lot of our car fits as well, some of the covert work. It's a major worry to us. I think £5 million probably is insufficient. We hold a larger percentage than many forces. It's all we can afford to do. So, you know, Lorraine, it's there is one policing budget we have to balance between many different things. So if we spend £7 million in the control room, we may have less officers, and so it's a tricky old process. But well, I think we do quite well. That particular radio system is also will be shared by the fire service and the ambulance service. We're working very well on that, I have to say, and I think the fire service is probably leading on it. I'm not sure, but we have a good relationship on that. It will get fixed, but it will take time, and it's tough choices the chief and I have to make as to where to put the investment. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Lorraine. Could you make sure that you lower your hand in the same way? And next, I've got Johnny Brownstein.
Thanks, Jeff. Just going back to the Black Lives Matter statements, I just noticed in the report it does say that it says we hope that the panel will support the message, and I wonder if we actually need to actively do that or if it's just taken as read. But also my question really is that the statement requests, so the statement talks about recognising discrimination and equality exists, and trying to tackle this as part of the in terms of tackle this as part of the county's rejuvenation. So I just wonder if there's any early ideas or any early concepts as to how that's going to be achieved. Because obviously I support the value, but it's a what rather than a how at the moment. So do we have any ideas for that?
Johnny, I'm not sure that's a question for me or for your panel. I think if you want to endorse it, you need to formally endorse it as a team. It's up to you. I can't make you do that. We have lots and lots of plans to deal with the Black Lives Matter, the inequalities within the county and within our two organisations, like the Opcc and the Chief as well. We talk about it a lot. I say the issues are not simple. They run very deep. I think we will have to look into ourselves. And what I say to every member of the team is don't look at it through your eyes, look at it through the eyes of a young black man, look at it through the eyes of a black mother, or every other different type or individual there. If you look at it through your own perspective, you won't get anywhere. But I can go into the work that the Chief has done, and I'm very impressed with it, the work that I'm doing around that. But I think your question might have been to the panel itself. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Well, it seems to me there's two parts to that.
We can pick up really
whether we endorse it later.
Okay, it's in the Chief Exec's report, that statement, and okay. you may want to add or alter amend it. The leadership Gloucestershire, but it didn't diminish the meaning of it too much.
Are you happy with that, Johnny?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there? I can't see anyone with their hand up on this part. Is that right? I just and there's been an issue raised with me in terms of how policing and enforcement moving people on from the centre of Gloucester has sometimes pushed antisocial behaviour out towards the sort of outer areas. I don't know, it was a comment made to me. Someone wanted to be able to ask a question, but that's a different matter than asking a question here. And that, you know, how that worked. We understand about not wanting to enforce.
Okay. Yep. In Gloucester City, we have the City Safe area, which the City Council and the Constabulary, and I think the commercial organisations as well, fund 1/3 each for the City Protection Officers. So they work within a defined boundary. And when we agreed to fund that, the Opcc put a condition in there that they would not be replacing needy people. I think we're talking about homeless people or people who may be congregated in the city centre and drink or involved in what other people would call antisocial behaviour. We put a clause in there to say our funding was contingent on there being a problem-solving approach and not just a displacement approach. Now, of course, people will go where they want to go, you know, the individuals. So I'm very content that that is not what's happening, or not what's happening deliberately. It's not the intention. Also, I think you're talking about the area in Kingsholm around there, and I think the person you're referring to is your councillor Jeremy Hilton, who's been in correspondence with me and I with him. We also, the City Council, the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner, fund and support Operation Solace, which are a multi-agency team which try to look a little bit beyond the obvious. Now, I think you're referring to people who are probably alcoholic and who are street drinking around the Kingsholm area, particularly around some shops on the London Road. Undoubtedly you are. You know, it is quite simple to move them on. There's a public place protection order, which means they can't be drinking there. And the police have been enforcing that as best they can. But they don't start with enforcement, just like they don't give tickets out straight away for a minor breach of lockdown. They start to explain, advise, etc., etc. Enforcement's a very last resort. And also I asked for a report from the City Centre inspector, who provided a very comprehensive report through Operation or Project Solace as to what they were trying to do. They really can't do a lot more. They can move these people on, that's easy. Simple, done. We can give them a ticket. They won't pay it, probably have no funds, even though they do buy some drink. The really clever bit is what you do with these people. And I haven't yet, I've asked for the work to be done. I don't know who these people are. Are they ex-servicemen who are alcoholics because of PSTD? Or are they just people like to get drunk for the fun of it? Their lives aren't much good. For my eyes, they just seem to be down and out. I'm sure they're not. They're human beings. So the police, I believe, are working very hard to deal with that issue. And their bit, obviously, the police must enforce the public space protection order if it needs to be done. But other agencies must step up to say, where do they go? Putting them under a railway arch somewhere so they can inject themselves and dying out of sight is not the answer. It really is not. So that's a piece of work I'm going to go back to Councillor Hilton to say, look, let's work together, understand who they are, understand why they're drinking. Can we moderate it? Can they have an abstinence programme? They've got accommodation. The City Council, I believe, I can't say it's 100% right, have housed them in London Road. So they will go somewhere. They're probably buying their drink locally. So it's the City Council again who has to do the licensing to see whether there's breaches of licensing. The police can assist with that. This is a very complicated issue. And the point I make, we can't make these people disappear. And I don't want them to disappear into some place out of sight where they drink a bit too much one day, out of the sight of people like me, the people who don't want them there, and they just die one cold night in the winter. The Gloucester City Mission, I think, are doing good work on that. I want to go and see them. I've been a bit out of action. I can't go and see people the way I used to, but that's the way forward, in my opinion. If you want an operational view, we have two operational people here could help you with that. I think Craig wants to come in. I'll put you on to Craig. Or Dean.
Chair, can I just raise one opportunity, really? We're due to return to a more geographic-based policing model on the 7th of September. It's something that we've been keen to do for a couple of years, but haven't really had the resource to be able to uplift, allowing us to allow our operating model to develop, where we will have 3 superintendents, one each for 3 geographic areas across the county. Now that's important because there will be greater visible leadership, there will be a point of contact for MPs, councillors like yourself, the head teachers, the managers of care homes.
Sorry, Rod, we're struggling to hear you. Can you just speak up a bit? You're a bit far from the mic.
Thank you very much. Is that better?
Yeah, that's good, Rod. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
So that you will have a local connection at senior level. As of the 7th of September, we've gone through a process of identifying those individuals, and they are going to be spending 2 weeks together between now and September to work on how they can work together as a team of 3. We don't want competition between them. We don't want one solving a crime on one patch and pushing it on to another one. We want them to think through with some thoughtful leadership how they can design out some of these issues and problem solve them with the partners and with the help of volunteers in the community. So I think there's a great opportunity coming up. It's a long time coming, but we're delighted to be able to put that into place. The arrangements are all there. And as I say, that goes live on the 7th of September. Thank you.
So I just had one final observation in relation to what Martin said, is that since lockdown, you'll be aware that many homeless people were housed in city centre hotels. We specifically, through the strategic coordinating group, had a homelessness cell that was worked on by different agencies who were trying to resolve some of those issues. Of course, in the early stages, the spread of the disease was so critical that housing homeless people in the likes of the Travelodge and Premier Inns was absolutely critical to the success of stopping the spread. Now, as we've moved more towards recovery, we're moving to the point now where many of those people are coming out of those locations, and I think that's probably added to some of the concerns recently. During that period of time of lockdown, of course, anxieties will have built up with people who are homeless, who probably have some additional mental health challenges. So the reaction to all of a sudden having to change the circumstances again, I think has been considerable. But the homeless cell, who are now working to the recovery cell, have been playing an instrumental role in trying to limit some of those longer term issues and work through them. But it has been challenging, as you can well imagine, the consequence of COVID, but we continue to work with the homeless cell to try and make sure we put long-term problem-solving measures in place.
Okay, can I thank all 3 of you for that? I think that was a really interesting answer. And I think the kind of holistic approach that's being taken and the care that's taken over people that you come into contact with, no matter the circumstances, is really important. And I think it's a message that needs to get out to the public when they just see something that's they don't like and complain. It's often a complicated issue. I can't see any other hands up, so we should be able to move on if that's all right with everybody.
Absolutely.
I'm just getting the agenda up. I ought to have printed it.
I think we're on to the Chief Executive's report, item 7.
Yep.
I'll pass it across to Richard, who's a good 2 meters away, I can assure the panel.
Okay.
Okay, Chair, can you hear me?
Yeah, thank
you.
you.
Hear you, Richard. You might want to you're on the side of the screen at the minute. Just put it around a little bit. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and then that's good. That's good. Go on.
Okay, thank you. So you have a copy of my report, which is contains quite a bit of information about some of the activity that we've been doing. I just want to point out a few key items. Item 3 is around holding to account, and already the Commissioner and the Chief Constable have talked about the holding to account during this period, and what they've done, they've used webcast as this to create the opportunity. And you'll see from my report the various themes that they've discussed at those meetings, and they're all available on YouTube. Item 4 talks about some of the other work we've been doing in the office, and it's been quite interesting because we've all been working from home, and I would say that our productivity has increased tremendously as a result of working from home rather than being in the office, because travelling to work not only pollutes the environment but also takes up time in your day. And I've seen a tremendous increase in our output, and I'm really proud of the team that we have supporting both the OPCC, Martin, and the Chief Constable and his team. Some of the additional activity we've undertaken, item 4.2, is a long list of extra things we've been doing. Whilst we initially thought working from home would give us a bit of downtime to catch up and clear up things that are long overdue, it's been far from that. It's been the total reverse. So there's just some examples of things we've been involved with. Craig alluded to earlier about the Strategic Coordinating Group, the SCG. I've been a member of that, and I would say that it's been very well chaired. My colleague Ruth Greenwood, who you know, was so we've been there, we've been part of the setup, and it's been a real pleasure to work with colleagues and partners in the way that they've managed this COVID approach. Item 4.5 we've already touched on, and that's around Martin raising this as an issue with Leadership Gloucestershire, and I do applaud him for doing that, because it's created the partnership approach we need to that item. Item 6, OPCC staff update. Really pleased to announce that Amanda Sedglov, I think you may have met in the past, who has been our Criminal Justice Policy Officer, has been successful in securing a 1-year secondment with HMPPS. And that's about supporting the changes to reducing reoffending, which I've talked about before, the parlous state of the probation service and all the changes that they try to create, which never works. Amanda is representing all of the OPCCs across the country, and I'm really proud that we've been allowed to enable her to do this secondment. Item 7 is around the estate. We're sat in our brand new training facility, and hopefully at some point in time you'll be invited to come down and see it. It's an absolute credit to PCC, the Chief Constable and team, for getting this building to the state it's in. And it really does provide all of our new recruits and all of our internal staff with the opportunity to train in a state-of-the-art facility. We also have a 160-seater auditorium. Again, there is a lack of such facilities within the county, and we intend to commercialise that opportunity. So we've got loads of car parking spaces and a great facility to attract people in. The BAM Furlong project is ongoing. We have a meeting later on today about that, and that's the site at junction 11 of the M5, where it crosses the A40. The project itself is in two parts. There's the decant, which is moving people off, and already some of the teams that were based there have moved off. And the second part is about re-providing the accommodation. It was opened in 1978. The accommodation is no longer fit for purpose, and it's really important that we provide the right accommodation for those teams that are based there. I'm also pleased to announce that the Lydney police station is now back open and fully operational, and has been very well received by the local communities. And my final point is at 7.4. Martin has tried for many years now to get the Ministry of Justice to buy into the concept of building a new court complex in Gloucestershire. Those of you may be familiar with the Cheltenham Magistrates Court, which is the only magistrates court left in the county. Is not in a very good state of repair, and the Crown Court is Napoleonic, very, very poor facilities and very, very poor access. And we've offered land. We've tried on numerous occasions to attract the MOJ to come down and actually invest in delivering a court, and that aim has not yet gone away. So we are pursuing that through our office. So any questions?
Okay, I've got two people raise their hands. I've got Steve Robinson first, and then Andrew Miller. So Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, a couple of questions there. One is the Gloucestershire funders. I was on a Zoom the other day of that new fund, explaining all about the coming together. I see that Martin's put money into that one. And does that mean then that there is less money, or is it a reallocation, or are there still the other funds that Martin has been giving to previously, be it, older people, safer driving and all the other bits and pieces? Or is it all going to be pushed within the Gloucestershire funders?
Okay, that's a really good question, Steve, because I sit on that group. We formed that very early April. As you know, we have the Commissioners Fund, but there are also some very other key major fund holders in the county. And we came up with the idea to actually work together as one and support all of those different people that were in need in the early stages of COVID. So the money that we've put in has just been a small part of our Commissioners Fund. So we haven't put lots of money into this. The Commissioners Fund stays as it is and supports all the different community projects and the different priorities within Martin's plan. But it's been a real pleasure to be part of a wider, broader based group who've been very, very happy to share and pool money. And I think it's quite a unique approach in the UK. And we meet every week. We've awarded just over £600,000 now collectively to a lot of different groups who are in a dire strait. And we also recognise that many of our local projects and charities potentially could fold over the next few months, and we don't want to see that happen. So we're there, and it's a really great partnership to be involved with.
Thank you, Richard. Could I ask? Thank you. Could I ask just one more? I see as well on there that you've upped the amount of money you're giving to each of the community safety partnerships.
Yeah,
that's been doubled, and somebody from office will be coming to each of those groups when we eventually meet. I'm really pleased to see that money's, and I hope that all the different community partnerships will possibly make it a little bit more inclusive as to how the money is spent. I know I should be pushing that in our own one in Stroud, so that we, perhaps the whole of the partnership have a say in how the money is spent.
Yeah, I think what Martin's done very, very cleverly, I think, is obviously refreshing his police and crime plan, which we'll talk about it and perhaps at the next meeting. But we've recognised for a long, long time that community safety partnerships have really struggled with funding. And it's not just about us being the funder, it's about other partners being involved as well. But we felt that doubling the 15k annual allowance to 30 would actually augment the really important and the strong values that we place on our CSPs. And so we hope that money is used effectively. We hope it supports a new policing crime plan, but more importantly, it gives people the ability to be a bit more innovative with what they do in their communities.
Can I just add something, Steve, if I may, before I pass back to, with regards to Commissioner's Fund, when COVID kicked off, we recognised that some of the local charities and organisations that we were funded to do particular work couldn't do that work because there's a lockdown. It could have been domestic abuse, it could have been street outreach, what have you. So we very, very quickly, in the very first few weeks, and credit to Richard, we went through all those projects and wrote them and said, you can now use that money for your core costs and to adapt your service in the light of a lockdown. And I think they were very grateful for that. So we also eased off on the reporting. So I say, in a crisis, you don't want bureaucracy, you just want some safeguards in there. So we did that fairly quickly. And one of the things we also was aware of, the elections were postponed. So PCCs are allowed to fund and to write plans for 1 year beyond their elected term, which is how there's a good buffer there. And we are in the process of going through with all our organisations their expectations and needs for the year 2021-22. Right, 21-22, because they are a lot of them are at risk because their normal fundraising has gone out the window. Just take a non-controversial one, well, no, none of them are controversial. The Holly Gazzard Trust, they make a lot of money, raise a lot of money from events, and of course they can't run those. The animal shelter in Cheltenham, their open day was closed. And it's the same across the whole county. So we're working very closely with them to try to support them through this. And the point I make, if I wanted the camera back, is to pay tribute to the voluntary and community sector in this county. We've always put them at the top table, really value them. I can't imagine this county going through COVID-19 without the support of the voluntary and community sector. And continue to support them over the next several years will be certainly a priority within my plans. Thank you, Steve. I'll pass you back.
No, I'd just like to say thank you, Martin, because that is very practical, that it is core funding that and all the fundraising that voluntary organisations will miss out on, and you've realised that and gone out to them and said, well, you can use it for whatever you need to at this important time. Thank you.
Okay, so I think Andrew Miller was next.
Yes, thank you, Colin. I'd just like to raise the proposal at moving the courts complex to water wells. So I know this isn't the first time it's been mentioned. It's been at least 2 or 3 years, but I have some concerns about it. I think the first major concern is really that Gloucester is a hub. We've got a transport hub, the bus station, new bus station. We've got the railway station, less than half a mile away. There's quite a few houses that quite a large number of people living within a mile or so of that court complex. If we move it off to waterwells, we don't have that public transport infrastructure, so it could be more difficult for people to access the court system, particularly the poorer members of society. So I'd like to express that concern. Also to ask what impact assessments the Police and Crime Commissioner has made about this proposed move. For example, has there been a consultation about those people who use the court system, everybody who uses the court system? I'm not just thinking about potential criminals, but perhaps barristers, the press, and so on, about what impact that would have. What about the impact on a number of jobs that might have to move out of the city centre as a result of it? I wonder if the Police and Crime Commissioner could explain what steps have been taken, what consultations have been made, and what impact assessments have been completed. Thank you.
Okay, Martin.
I can't hear you, Martin.
Oh.
Martin's dropped out. Let's see where he is. No, I can see Craig. It's all right. Can you hear us, Craig?
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, let me
back
see you,
on.
Martin. That's good. Good. Excellent.
Thank you, Andrew.
Away you go.
Helpful question, thank you. I mean, the Crown Court is for the county. Actually, the Magistrates Court of Cheltenham is for the county as well. The primary reason I want, first of all, let me just say that within my remit, it doesn't cover the courts that have no responsibility for them whatsoever. I don't receive any funding for it. It's just that it is the part of the criminal justice system which has a huge impact on victims, and often the police are blamed because a court case failed. So the reason I want to see a new court in Gloucestershire is because the current ones, both of them, are failing. My office produced a report which was they interviewed many people, including former judges and the barristers and the defence community as well. They produced a report. Her Majesty's Inspector of the courts in the southwest pretty much condemned the facilities at Gloucester and Cheltenham, particularly Gloucester, as being degrading. And I've spoken to Minister of Justice about that. So yes, we have consulted widely. I've written to all the MPs in the county, all of them, particularly Alex Chalk, who is the junior lead, I think, for the courts, has responsibility, seeking for him to come to look at the Gloucester Crown Court and to work with me. And I've written to Richard Graham as well, asking him to work with me. I'm sorry to say I've not had a reply. I've also written to Robert Buckland, who was more helpful, and he asked one of his aides or his ministers to come and talk to us, but COVID kind of rather spoilt that one. So the courts are not acceptable. That is, every single report you receive, they're not acceptable. I don't mind where that court goes. Anywhere in the county that is accessible will do for me. I'm just trying to be helpful about water wells. It's no more than that. I don't have any land anywhere else in the centre of Gloucester. I don't know if the county council does. I don't know if the city council does. I can only offer what I have. I'm not keeping it much longer if we carry on like this. I have to say I've discussed that with the Chief Constable recently, and I can't just hang on to it. Now, the reason I would like it to be there, or I think it's a good option, and so do others, is because it's got the cells right next to it. The most expensive part of any court is the cell complex. We have 50 cell complex right next door, which can be utilised, no problem at all. That will save millions of pounds. Secondly, it has excellent IT connections because it's actually right onto the Waterwells Business Park, has top rate connections. It's not far from the Park and Ride at Dursley. It's not far from Stonehouse on the main line from London and Bristol. A lot of barristers travel by train. It's not that difficult. It's on junction 12 of the M5, so that makes it quite convenient. Most people have access to cars, some don't. People don't go to court that often, and as the previous, I think, Minister of Justice said, it just occasionally you can put yourself out, but not if you're a victim. You need to make it work for them. And also, it's on the Park and Ride, which is quite good, and it's right next to police headquarters, which makes good support, really. So it's a good location. If anybody else thinks differently, just come up with another location. You'll have my full support, and I will get behind it. I'll ask the Chief to get behind it, and I will 100%. There's been a lot of consultation. I think it will create more jobs because I think what's going to happen, and we're not far off at the moment, if we do nothing, you mark my words, within 2 to 3 years, we won't have a court system in Gloucestershire. It'll all be in Bristol. That's what will happen. They say it won't, but they said what's happened now wouldn't happen. That's what will happen. So I spoke to Chris Phillip, who's the Minister of State on the Ministry of Justice, I think, and he agreed he would work with me on this. And we're in correspondence on that right now. Now, if this county does not get behind this or take it off me, we will get nothing. There's £1 billion worth of funding out there, allegedly, and I say allegedly, to modernise the court system. Now, we can talk about it, we can argue about it, or we as a county can say our courts are rubbish, our waiting lists are rubbish, and we can actually start to fight as one and go back to the court system and get a new court. I don't care where it is, but I am sick to death of arguing. I'm a bit disappointed that the MPs don't reply to my letters. Let's forgive them, they're very busy people. I'm sure it's an error. But we need to do this. Now, I will do my bit to offer that land up at a sensible price, not for profit, just to put it in the public domain. So we haven't got to bite off the private sector. I'm also seeing the figures. We're down to 1 Crown Court now, and physically 1 courtroom. Because over the next several months, while COVID and 1 metre distancing, it's impossible to run 2 courts. So at 50% capacity is not much better in the magistrates' court. And this means people who are victims of domestic abuse come to court time and time again. They can wait 12 months for a trial. It's adjourned, it's adjourned, it's adjourned, and they drop off. Now, we know that happens. I can give you examples of that. So what do we do about it? As a commissioner, I can only do so much. I have been several weeks ago, we've heard about Blackstone courts that we had Nightingale hospitals because it's creaking to a halt in Gloucestershire. I own the former magistrates court in Cirencester. I also own the former magistrates court in Stroud. I don't mean me personally, the Office of Police Crime Commissioner. We took on those buildings. I have offered either of those buildings to the Ministry of Justice, no, the HMCTS, and they are actively looking at potentially reopening Cirencester. They've been to see it, they surveyed it, they've looked at the cells there, and is it feasible? I don't want any money for that. I just want the system to work. And we will offer Cirencester Magistrates Court, we will help them get up and running in weeks, and it could be up and running within just a few weeks if people get behind it. But negativity and arguing where it goes, this, that, and the other, is just going to kick into long grass again, and they're smart people. They'll say we can do it at Bristol, but that's not working either. So that's where we are. I speak to the judges on a regular basis. I chair the local criminal justice board. We've discussed it's a standard agenda item, so I talk to defence people. I work with the CPS. I consult everybody. But just tell me why I can't make it happen, somebody, please. Thank you. And Andrew, sorry, I got a bit of a high horse there, and it wasn't about you personally. I just feel very strongly about this. And, you know, it's the tail end of the system, isn't it? You know, no matter how good a job the police do, the witnesses, if you can't get into court, they can't get justice. And that's pretty much where we are right now. I've lost you. Colin, I can't hear you.
I was on mute. I was on mute. Yes, I think it's really about, I think it's about access and clearly for the police to support moving people to court, Water Wales would be better. But I'm just thinking about all the people who live in Gloucester or the transport hubs, the ease of access for ordinary people, poor people perhaps who don't have their own cars. And I'm sure Water Wales is fine if you go by car, but if you're going by public transport, that's not quite so easy.
It's on the parking right, it's on the bus route.
So I mean, I
can give you dozens of reasons, but you give me another site. You know, I don't know, you're toughly, aren't you? Where do you want it? Because no one's come up with a site. And actually, we discussed this with Geoffrey Clifton Brown, who pointed out from the Cotswolds, it's a long way from everywhere. And it's actually probably quicker to get there from that point of view. It's probably quicker to get there from Stroud. And actually, we did all the timings. So, and actually, getting into the centre of Gloucester is a nightmare. You try parking there, especially if you're poor.
I take it.
In many ways, I could give up on this completely because I just get the feeling that there's people in this county who doesn't want it to happen. And I don't know why.
Okay, there's a few people with their hands up, and I do know that the courts are in such a poor state, and it does seem as if what was the Saturday court for prisoners may well be in Bristol sooner rather than later.
It already is.
Yeah, so we're already seeing that happening. I had Karen next, but that item seems to have raised a number of hands. So I'll stick on that issue, if that's all right, Karen, or was it on the matter of the courts?
No, it was about courts. And okay. I completely support you, Martin, on that, having been a probation officer and worked the courts and actually worked the Bristol courts before they were renewed. It is very difficult for everybody, and it's quite debilitating. The one issue I would take up on with you is about the integration of family court within that section, and having, I go back to when probation officers actually did family court reports, but I have worked the family courts, and their needs are very different. There's a model which is now used of having family justice centres where, which takes them out of the criminal justice forum. I don't know whether you had a design model where that would be different, but having worked courts where you have the whole range of court services, I don't think it is, both in safeguarding, but just in terms of culture, is the right place to have family justice.
Karen, thank you for your comments. And, you know, I would defer to your knowledge on that. You're far more experienced on those issues. We did have some designs drawn up pro bono by a design company. They were just an outline idea of what could be done. My offers to Chris Phillip, the Justice Minister, was to say, can we work with you to design in Gloucestershire the court of the future? Because across the whole of the UK, we know the current court system is difficult. It doesn't really work with IT, and it doesn't work with COVID and social distancing. So my offer to Chris Phillip was say, look, let's sit down together and let's, as a small county, quite a safe county, you know, just trial it here. Let's build the futuristic court that we can, and listen to people like yourself about family court issues, get the best IT in there. You know, if you're a young mother, a witness, where do you put the children? You know, because they have to go somewhere, and you would not take your children to Gloucester Crown Court now. I wouldn't want my wife to go to give evidence, particularly. It's all very old, and it's difficult. No disrespect to the court staff, they're doing the best job. So my plea, and it really is for the sake of this county, can we build something which is great for the county? And don't just think, well, they're criminals, it doesn't matter, there's no votes in this. You know, if you are a victim of crime, you want a good experience, and that's where you're coming from, I know, with the family court. You have to have that. You have to have facilities where children can feel safe while their mothers give evidence, where the witnesses don't mix with the offenders and people can be kept apart, where the juries feel they're part of the system and not just run from pillar to post. You know, the report by the HMCTS Inspectorate said Gloucester Crown Court was absolutely degrading. You know, the cells there, you can't lie down, they were covered in blood.
I totally get that, but the family court system is a very, very different system.
Yes, I know, and that's we need people like you, your expertise to do that, because I don't know that system, so I'm just trying to do what's right and get to a point where people.
Well, Bristol have a family justice centre, which is a completely self-supporting.
I certainly would support that as well.
I'm going to just butt in there. As you've said, Martin, the courts are separate. They're nothing to do with you. It is an important issue, though, and one that's critical for criminal justice within the county, and indeed the family courts in terms of children's services. So it's very important, and I hope that you, Karen, will talk with Martin about those issues and maybe
Colin,
look at that.
You're right. I'm not accountable for the courts, but I do have an interest in them. I do chair the local criminal justice board, which we're encouraged to do, and I spoke to Robert Butland about that with others, and he was very keen that we did that, as was the Home Secretary. But it's pretty much unanimous. We don't have a good service in Gloucestershire. So if I'm not accountable for it, I would ask you, who is?
Well, at the moment, it's and we might come on to that. Brian, if it's on the same issue, could you keep it fairly succinct? Do you want to unmute, Brian?
I've been trying.
Okay.
Sorry, Chair. Well, I will be succinct because I always am. But Martin has been making some very good points. And my parallel would be if it was a business and basically you need to bring things together, that it makes it more and more efficient. But the only thing I would ask is the space you've got at Waterwells, could it actually bringing together all the court systems, including all your family arrangements and everything else? Could that be brought under one roof? Because if you're going to do it, if you're going to do this particular system of bringing it all together, you've got to have the space and look into the future to make sure you still got the space, say, in 50 years. Because once you do it, once you commit, basically it's got to work. And
Brian, right.
All right, thank you.
You're absolutely right, Brian. It's 2.7 acres, which is ample space. You could put Crown and Magistrates Court on there. We've had that checked out. So it's a very good location. And it could have the family court. It may not, depend on what was appropriate. It absolutely could be done, but it is spot on. These are 50-year decisions, just like for this training centre here. The chief and I decided we were going to do this. We needed it, and that's the two people who had to make that decision. We did it. We're going to discuss the issue around the motor patrol centre on the A40 this afternoon, and it'll be down to me and the chief to do it. If we succeed, we should get the credit. If we fail, we're held accountable. Now, would please somebody, we have to come to a decision as a county whether we want a new court or not, because this isn't going to survive COVID in our current situation. When we come out of COVID, the regeneration, that's my view. We will not survive COVID. The court system will not survive that in the longer term. So will somebody come up with a location that's good? I have respect for Alex Chalk. You know, he's a fine MP as far as I'm concerned, but he is the person responsible for courts. I would like to meet him. I've invited him to come to Gloucester Crown Court to have a look at it. The inspectorate did, and they were shocked by it. And we talk about access. Neither of our courts are compliant with the Disability Equalities Act. They are both in breach of that. In Gloucester Crown Court, you had to be carried in to get there. That's once you've been through the front entrance to Shire Hall, gone round the houses, and then you have to be carried into court. And Judge Tabor, I think when he was there, maybe the one currently, said that's so degrading. I'm not having courts like that. They have to go to Bristol. I think that's correct. I don't want to misquote him. So your politicians, if we can put some pressure to say, make a decision. If you don't want to do it, I can sell the land. I need the money, and I'll go away.
If I can go back,
just a minute,
very, very quickly that basically, I think it's a very sound idea, and frankly, if people were to think about it, it's an opportunity, too good an opportunity to not to take advantage of it.
Okay, thank you, Brian. I've got Johnny next.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, the conditions of the courts in this county is completely unacceptable, right? I think we can all agree on that. And in Cheltenham, it's a known problem. The conditions of the magistrates' courts here have been in decline for a significant amount of time. A person who lives in my ward works there and has explained to me this in detail. This is not a new thing. And Mr. Chalk has been there in person lately in the time that I've been a councillor, anyway, so the last two years or so. And I'm really disappointed to hear that the Commissioner's efforts to engage MPs across the county have not been even acknowledged by our parliamentarians, including the Minister responsible for this area. And I think us as a panel, we can't just sit back passively and accept that. And so I'd like to propose that the panel writes to Mr. Chalk, that we express our serious concern about the situation, that we endorse the Commissioner's attempts to solve the problem, and we urge him to engage on this issue as promptly as possible.
Johnny, can I just respond to that before the panel discuss that? I wrote to all the MPs. I wasn't expecting a response from 4 of them because it's more for information while I was writing to the others. But I certainly would be grateful for your support for the Minister or the Junior Minister or whatever you call it, to be contacted. And it's not a competition. I would just like to work with him.
Yeah. It's difficult for me to see and get a gauge of everyone because on the iPad I can only see so many faces. But is there anyone objecting to that? Actually, you're just going to have to unmute and shout. I can't hear anybody, so.
Fine.
Sorry. I didn't hear anyone. So we will do that. We will write to Alex to get him to engage with the PCC on the potential for new courts.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Chair, but it's a very fine line between lobbying and informing. And I think any letter that the panel writes would need to be very carefully worded because you're not supposed to be lobbying. So I think we need to think about the approach and the content of the letter, but we can work on that together.
Yeah, that's fine. Right. I think I'd got Lorraine but could I just ask Lorraine? I think we need to move on from the courts thing, and we'll see what transpires between Martin and the Ministry of Justice over the next period, but we may want to come back to it. Lorraine?
It was a very quick one, and it was about the court, I'm sorry, but it was a very quick one. I just wondered whether, I don't know how much you're looking to sell your piece of land for, Martin. I just wonder whether that might be an issue, the cost.
No, it's not an issue. We're not looking to commercialise anything. We're really there trying to be helpful ourselves. Office Cirencester Court, it's been made available to the HMCTS. I've visited them on 2 occasions now. I've shown the judges around it, and Richard will bear me out. I said on the call, I'm not here to make money out of this. We don't want to commercialise it. We just want a solution. And, you know, the Cirencester, if they do take it, we should hear it in the next several weeks. If they are going to take it, it would offer an interim solution. It's not a long-term solution because we have plans for that, the entire building going forward. But we're just trying to be helpful, and we're not going to commercialise it. Whatever it's worth or a bit less is what we let them have it for.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sorry, I've just
in the public sector that way.
Yeah. Right. So I seem to have. No, we're all right. Any other questions on the Chief Executive's report? Can't see any hands raised or anybody shouting. So if we move on to the draft annual report.
Could the chief with his ACC be leave the meeting now at this point? Would that be okay?
Yes, I think that's fine.
We are busy people, so I'll just get the chief to say goodbyes.
Before you go, though, I just want to thank you for coming along and giving us the information you did. And I hope I'm speaking for everyone. I think we appreciate the work that the police have been doing and the way in which they've gone about their business, which you've explained really well. So if you can pass on our thanks to actually every one of your staff and volunteers, that it's been really good that we've had the police working the way they did during this crisis. It's been excellent.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. I will pass that on. I'm very grateful, and thank you all for your support as well today. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And now,
so one more, Chair. I'm very sorry to interrupt, Chair.
No.
Even though we've let Craig go, we have actually got his computer here to operate on. So Chris is going to try and log in on my computer. We'll keep Craig's for now, but at some point we may just try to swap computers so we can actually do some work.
Okay.
Chris is trying to log on to that, and
we wouldn't want to stop Craig doing some work.
We certainly won't cut this line till we got the other one going.
Okay. And I think I've got Johnny. You've got your hand raised.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So just before we move on, I also wanted just the panel to approve the message from Leadership Gloucestershire about the Black Lives Matter issue. There is a request that the panel supports it, so I just wanted to make sure that we do.
Okay, is everybody comfortable that we do that? Again, raise your hand or shout. I don't mind. Just let me know. I can't see anybody.
Well, we're trying to get logged onto this.
I can't see anybody objecting. So I think we, as a panel, endorse that statement of Leadership Gloucestershire.
Thank you, Rob.
Okay. Good. We now move on to the draft annual report.
Right.
I'm quite conscious that we're nearly at 2 hours. So if somebody wants to let me know if they need a break, we can take 5 minutes. So just on the chat, let me know. Otherwise, we'll continue.
A second a break.
All good.
I'll take a view. Should we do that now or after the annual report? I've got no comment. So do you want to do the annual report, Martin?
Thank you very much, Chair. It's really in your hands there. It is there in its draft form. It hasn't been published or printed yet or put on the websites. It runs into many 69 pages, so I'm not going to go through it. We'll be here till tea time, but I'm happy to take any questions of it. To me, I'm very pleased with it. It covers a very busy year, not everything by any means. I hope it's a good read for people. I'd be interested in the panel's views on what we should do with it, where it should go, and its content, of course, as well. But that's with 60 odd pages, 70 pages. I'm not going to go through every bit of it, Chair. But I think it's a credit to my team, the police, and everybody else, the work that they've undertaken in the last 12 months. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for bringing it that much earlier. So it is a draft, and so thank you for that. Karen has said that she needs to leave at 12, and actually she was the first to indicate. So I'll take Karen first, and then I know.
No, I was just telling you that I was leaving. I didn't put my hand up though.
Oh right, okay, all right. So thanks. Did you have a question on the annual report?
No, it was just for your information.
Okay, all right, thanks. And Andrew, I noticed your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Colin. I'd just like to comment on the police buddies for school school parking, which I think is a lovely idea. And if the Police and Crime Commissioner would like to get in touch with me afterwards, I can suggest some schools where they could go.
Thank you very much. They have gone down remarkably well. They're not that expensive. We'll see what we can do. We'd love some people to come on board with us to help to joint fund them, but we'll certainly be in touch. And the children like them. Thank you very much, Andrew.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's right. I don't see any other hands up. Or Johnny, have you left your hand up, or have you got something?
I thought I was raising it, but I was actually putting it down from the previous time. So now I've re-raised it because I would like to say something. Yes.
Okay, go on.
Great. So I just want to say I think it's an extremely good document. You cover a lot of the key themes. The tone is really engaging. It's immaculately presented throughout. I think it's really helpful. We were here last year and we went over the document, and that was quite good. But compared to that, I think it's far, far better. So I just wanted to kind of congratulate the Commissioner and his team for that. And I also wanted to pick up on the parking buddies, which are brilliant. I think they're really joyful. They're obviously working, and so how much does it cost? How many have you got, and how do I get one? Thanks.
Right. I'm not sure. How much do they cost, Chris?
Which one's
the parking buddies?
Parking buddies are around about £170
a pair.
I think
They're about £150 a pair, we believe. They can be ordered through us, or we could give you the contact so you can order them directly through Cheltenham Borough Council or the County Council. The County Council has the statutory responsibility for road safety, not the district councils, but all contributions will be gratefully received. Children like them, so do schools.
Yeah, and hopefully motorists do take account of it. And so,
I think they do. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Next person was Steve Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's just been mentioned by Martin about road safety, and yeah, we've got a road safety group under the chairmanship of Councillor Norman. It is concerning to me, and I saw that you've always dealt with road safer driving, and there seems to be a real increase in this last year of sadly deaths on our road, fatal and serious accidents, and I don't know what you feel you're doing about that, Martin.
Thank you. That's a very challenging. So I seem to be on broadcast in the entire centre at the moment. Sorry if it's affecting your end or not.
So if you turn that off, you're on this now.
I really do apologise. What have I got?
If you shut that one down, just follow it down. You're up on.
Hang on.
shove the screen on it, Chris.
Right. Okay.
There you go.
Okay. I think I might have to stand for this one. No. Okay. Can you hear me still?
That's good, Martin.
You
Yeah.
can. I hope all this difficulties that you've got isn't to support your bid for better IT for the police.
No, the IT here is absolutely great. I just don't think it's particularly compatible with WebEx or some issues we've got at the moment. It's a very good question about road safety. It's something I'm including in my Refresh Police and Crime plan. I'll have to wait for that, I'm afraid. But road deaths in the UK, we do have the second lowest death rate in Europe, Sweden being the lowest. And you're absolutely right, Steve, it does need to go lower. So I think there is a need for a consistent piece of work to deal with that. A lot of it is around the issues of elderly people. I think coming out of lockdown, we're doing quite a bit of piece of work around that when people come out of lockdown and haven't driven their cars for maybe 4 or 5 months, those children longer. So we're looking at how we can support the more elderly under the not overlooked strand. And we also know it's young people who are disproportionately impacted or feature in the casualty rates. Steve, I'd rather come and talk to you directly because it is quite a big piece of work we're currently engaged in to try to make our roads safer. I think the takeaway from today is during the lockdown, people began to realise that it was kind of nicer with less cars speeding, the less antisocial behaviour on the roads as people try to get to work as quick as they possibly could. So we're trying to develop the social side of the safe and social driving priority over the next several months to see how we can understand how we can deal with those people who are frankly antisocial on the road and make it an unpleasant experience. And we think that will probably bring down the KSIs. You'll often come in the past a lack of policing on the motorway. Actually, most of our fatal accidents happen on our rural roads. So it is one of the bonuses of bringing back our roads policing unit from the Tri-Force function. We did that several years ago now, but so they could concentrate very much on the rural roads, which they weren't or less so before. Steve, it's a good question. I can't do it in the limited time I have now, but we'll talk about it, and I'd love to work with you on it.
Yeah, I'd like to. Thank you.
Okay, and Karen, you've got a question now?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm to leave in a minute. I left myself a note about domestic homicide reviews, and I thought I couldn't remember what it was actually on this action item. Would you like to tell me how you answer these and what the reporting mechanism is, so that we learn from? We got it.
Did you catch that, Martin?
I didn't. I do apologise. I'm not sure if it's an issue at my end or your end, but I couldn't hear the question. Sorry, Karen.
Domestic homicide review. How are they progressed?
Yes, of course. I'm going to pass you on to my chief executive or Chris, who yeah. These are the team who deal with that. So
social distance, please. Yeah. Okay. So this is going to be a double-headed answer. So you'll recall a few years ago, and I'll get Chris to talk about Safer Gloucestershire in a moment, but the domestic homicide reviews that we were running in the county were taking over 4 years to deliver, which is unacceptable. So we completely reviewed our process, and that's now governed through Safer Gloucestershire. So the current DHRs we've got running, we're about to have one published, and we've got the 4 years down to 12 months, and I think that's great success. And that was a very complicated DHR, and there's 4 others on the go at the moment, so we'll be able to report back on those. But I'll hand over to Chris as the chair of Safer Gloucestershire.
Hi, Karen. So
are you able to tell us which local authorities?
I think there's 2 currently going in Gloucester, 1 in Cheltenham and 1 in Stroud. That's just from the top of my head. I think that's the numbers. In terms of, as Richard said, I think it's been one of the successes of Safer Gloucestershire for me is that the whole oversight of the process, working with the district councils, having accredited chairs, which has been seen a real success. What I would like going forward is to review the previous domestic homicide reviews to make sure agencies are learning from it. And that's one of the things that's really key for me going forward. So I've asked that the county's domestic homicide review coordinator, a lady called Sophie Jarrett, who is based within the constabulary. I've asked her, working with partners, to put a bit of a dip sample to look at what's been done previously and what the lessons are, so we can hold it to account other agencies. So that's planned for the autumn. It was going to happen sooner, but due to COVID, we've postponed it a little bit. But it's something that is on my radar and on my agenda going forward.
Okay, I think the model of serious cases they're reviewed is probably a good model to look to.
Yeah,
okay.
I agree.
Just before I take anybody else, it seems that we're getting feedback from Martin's PC. So we're hearing what I'm saying a second time. Do you have a speaker on that maybe doing that?
We could try and mute between questions if that's okay, Chair, while we try and sort it out.
Okay. I've got Colette. I think you've got a hand raised, Colette.
No, I have hand raised.
Okay. Right. So, are there any other questions on the annual report? And that's a no. There was a request. We'll take 5-minute break, if that's okay.
So if we're taking a break, can everybody please mute?
Yeah.
Because the live stream will still be live.
Okay. All right. So, my watch says noon. So 5 past. Right. We'll see you then.
ready. We're here.
Okay, I'll just wait for a few more pictures to come up.
Okay.
If people can open up their videos again, that's it. Looks as if most people are here, so shall we get started again? Thanks very much. So if we move on now to the appointment of the Chief Executive Officer, I think that's the next item. So, Andrea, do you want to? So are we here and ready to go?
Yeah, sorry, Chair, I was just counting to check that you were for it, and you are. So please carry on.
So, Martin.
Right, Chair, you've got the papers. Hope you can hear me without too much feedback now. We've tried to resolve that.
That's much better.
Good. Okay. First of all, you'll know we discussed this. I phoned you when I made the decision. I discussed it with you that we needed now to move to a permanent appointment. You will be aware that following the retirement of my previous Chief Executive, we appointed Richard Bradley as the interim temporary Chief Executive. He was deputy at that particular time. And we decided at that particular point, because of the imminency of the PCC election, we should defer going to a permanent appointment until after the outcome of that election, when I would have put that before you then. But as you know, the election was postponed. We discussed it and we felt it was too long to keep somebody on a temporary basis. It would have been over 2 years at that particular point. So we went to advert. The process was that followed by the process to the letter. We made a point of that, making sure it's absolutely how it should be. I sought advice from senior HR professionals, Zoe Durant, who advised me on all the way through to make sure that I was compliant. And I asked one of the College of Police and Independent Assessors to oversee the process again and to sit on the board with me and my deputy Chris. So that was Val Ainsworth. She is completely independent, well respected, and she is there to oversee how I conduct myself in the panels, which there is no bias, and so on. And you have her report, which I think I hope you'll be satisfied with, that it was a fair and open process. We had 3 applicants. All 3 were invited to interview. I think it's 4 applicants actually, and only 3 were invited to interview. Only 2 of those actually turned up on the day. The other person withdrew over the weekend beforehand. I have to say that both candidates were of a high quality, but the decision of the panel, the interview panel was that Richard Bradley was the successful candidate. He met all the criteria. Of course, we know him as well, but that wasn't actually influence for it, because and I had to guard against that happening. So we didn't want any unconscious bias involved in that. So you've read the report. He's very able. I can look back to his performance over the last several years, or last year as temporary. He's been an excellent, kind of hard taskmaster for me, but he's been a very, very good Chief Executive, very fair, very balanced, and the way he's been leading the team has been excellent. So I have no reservation in endorsing him to you. And of course, I think the protocol now is that he addresses you directly.
Okay, I'll just make the one comment, which I did raise with you, which was that at the time, you did say that you were bringing the process to the panel before you went through. That, I mean, it didn't happen, and so on. And you did you acknowledged that, but I just think that it was an omission, and so be it.
Yeah.
But I think
I'm sure you're right, and I'm sure I said it, but I don't recall it. I forgot. It was no slight on the panel. If I did say it was something that I was offering to do, it wasn't legally required. But I just apologise to the panel for not doing what I said I would do. I don't often do that, as you know.
No, I know. And it seems to me that the report that you've put before us are pretty comprehensive about the whole process. I've got a raised hand from Andrew. If I just take Andrew just before we move on. Andrew?
Yeah, just want a couple of extra details about the report. So it was advertised in April. So the two questions here are, where was it advertised and for how long? For example, was it advertised in LinkedIn, which is a very common method of advertising these days? So the process was independently managed, but I don't recall who it was that was independently managed, and so that's a detail I think I'd like to know as well. I think that should have been in the report. So yeah, just a couple of details really.
Okay, Martin.
Okay, the advert was advertised on social media primarily, both internally and externally. We didn't go to an agency. There was a good take up, so pretty much we had people from all across the country express an interest, so primarily on social media. The independent process is that we have, I use the head of the HR services for the Gloucester Constabulary. We're two separate legal bodies, so we tend to use them because they are cost effective. We have this agreement with the Constabulary, we can use their resources. So that was the internal side, the professional side, should we say, to make sure it's all lawful and done correctly. And regards the oversight of it, it's by Val Ainsworth. There is a list of people endorsed and registered with the College of Policing. That's the government-backed organisation used for appointment of senior people in the public sector, primarily chief constables and assistant chief constables. She is completely independent of me and the police service, and she was there to see fair play and to provide a report to say that, or to call us out if it's not appropriate.
Okay, I've got Johnny with a raised hand.
How long was it
sorry.
advertised for? That was one of my questions.
It would be for I think it was a month or just shy of a month, which is again the advertised, and then we have to allow a period between the close of the interview when we tell people that they will come for an interview to do preparations, normally a week or 2 weeks between there. You know, if I got it slightly wrong, there is a process which has been tested many times of how long you have to have between one process and the other. So we attracted 4 people, which is quite good actually.
Thank you.
Okay, so Martin, you said you were going to ask Richard?
Yeah, I think the protocol now is Richard just an account of himself, which I hope you'll be satisfied with, and I think it's over to you to say what you need to say.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So, just briefly, as part of my address, I just want, for those panel members that don't know me or are aware of my background, I have a very broad range of experiences and skills that I've acquired in different sectors, including the police service. I've worked in the local authority, and for the last 8 years, I've worked for the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner. And we've got a proven track record of success in all of those different agencies. I'm very enthusiastic, I'm very strategically aware, very loyal. I've got very strong organisational skills and, of course, management skills. And I've worked in many programmes where I've had to manage quite considerable change programmes. So I've got that. The opportunity to work as the interim chief executive has enabled me to demonstrate to the PCC, the Opcc team, wider stakeholders, and indeed the chief constable and his senior team and officers, that I've got the ability to work at this level. My main philosophy in life is that I work with people, I don't do to, and I think that's really important, because whilst we hold the chief constable to account, my approach is that we work with them and then we hold to account when we need to, and I think that approach has worked really well. I've engaged, I've made sure that my team are actively engaged now with the constabulary as they go through a period of change, and that we all work together, because if you try and impose things on people, it doesn't always necessarily work to best effect. Number of achievements since I've been within the PCC. Obviously, I've developed a really great approach to commissioning, which has been recognised nationally as good practice. The Commissioners Fund, I developed that and implemented that on behalf of Martin. We've got over 470 projects that are in receipt of funding. On the broader context, in terms of building and nurturing partnerships, I have been a member of the Health and Wellbeing Board. I'm a member of Leadership Gloucestershire, Vice Chair of the Criminal Justice Board. I sit on a number of regional groups now. I sit on the South West Reducing Reoffending Board. You heard reference earlier about the Gloucestershire funders. I was the initiator of that board. I sit on the High Sheriff's Funding Panel, and I've also sat on a National Victims Portfolio Group, which is another one of my passions, and that is about making sure that victims get the best possible support. And I'm really strong on that. Making sure that, obviously part of my role is to make sure that we carry out our duties to the highest of standards. So I've set up a new holding to account process. We regularly meet with the Chief Constable. I've got some very robust holding to account processes in place, challenging the constabulary on various matters. I'm really proud to say that we've got a new approach to dealing with complaints against the constabulary, which came out of the Policing and Crime Act 2017. We're in the process now of setting up an independent panel, which I think is this will be the first time we've ever done that. That will be bringing members of the public in to sit on a panel to provide some oversight to closed complaints that have been made against the police, and that will be published. And I think that's showing that we are a transparent organisation. I totally understand community need. Having served in the police service and in the local authority where I was a community safety officer, I really, really get the importance of the community voice, and also the value of working through the public through community safety partnerships and other boards. I've recruited, if you meet my team, I'm really proud of them. I think I've recruited some great people of various ages and various backgrounds. I've restructured the office in the last 9 months with the assistance of Ruth Greenwood. Each member has clear direction, is clear on what their roles are. And I've based my working mission on what I call the 4 C's, and that's commissioning, complaints, criminal justice, which Martin's alluded to, and community safety. And I also value the working relationship I have with the Chief Officer team. And I'm really proud to work for the OPCC. That's my address. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was just making some notes, but basically, I think Richard has been doing a fantastic job, and I genuinely believe in continuity. Basically, things have been vastly improved since he was appointed. It is working. We're getting good reports from him and the Chief Constable, and we're now getting into a situation where we can scrutinise and understand and help everyone concerned. So I genuinely believe in continuity and that Richard should continue in the situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Is there anyone else that wants to add anything? Any questions of either Martin or Richard, for that matter? I can't see anyone. So I think at this stage, can we take it that we accept the position? I can't remember the wording now without pulling it up on screen. But we're content with the appointment.
Chair, can I just?
We need to vote on that.
Chair, can I just butt in and just say that when you're making this decision, you are basically confirming that the candidate has the professional competence to exercise the role as set out in the role profile, and that you feel that the candidate has the personal independence to exercise the role as set out in the role profile. So that's what we're deciding.
So we all understand that and we're all content with that. Without doing a roll call, can anyone who either would want to abstain or vote against let me know now? It's very quiet and I see no hands raised. So congratulations to Richard. And I think from is that some clapping going on in the background? Yeah. Excellent. So well done, and we're pleased to see you staying.
Thank you, Chair.
I'm just going to flick back to the agenda. And sorry, I'll just we're okay with that. So, and that appears to be the last item, apart from the dates of the next two meetings. Is there anyone that wants to say anything at this stage?
Yeah, if I may, Chairman, it's Philip Burford.
Hello, Philip.
I have an issue which I would like to raise, but there is a danger that it will fall into the constraints of agenda item 10 and require the exclusion of the press and public.
Sorry, so I'm really sorry to interrupt you, Chair, but this is a meeting held in public. We have published the agenda, so we do not do any other business. What we can do, if the panel...
with respect, Chair.
No, I haven't finished yet. Sorry, Councillor Burford.
With respect, Chair.
Can I finish, please? What we can do, if it's okay with you, particularly as Councillor Burford feels that this might be information that is not best discussed in public, with the Police and Crime Commissioner's agreement, I can ask the comms officer to end the live link, and then you can have a discussion offline on this particular sensitive matter, if that's okay.
Is that all right, Philip?
The point I was going to raise that it does actually relate to the policing of COVID issue that was brought up earlier in the meeting, and I stayed quiet through that because of the danger of exposing the identity of a particular individual.
Okay, all right. We'll just leave it 5 minutes. We'll close the meeting, but raise the issue if that's all right with...
Steve Robinson has his hand up, Chair.
Steve, sorry.
Thank you. I asked for a paper on the special constables and how they had worked hard during the COVID-19, and I'd just like to say thank you very much. I'd just like to record our thanks to the specials. I know I've worked closely with them in our own community, and you know they've worked really have outstandingly over this period of time. A lot of them have been furloughed from day one, and they've put in 100%. And it's been really great, the work that the specials have done supporting our full-time staff. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for raising that, Steve. It was a good piece in the report which showed just how much they were doing. It's difficult to go into detail and all the rest, but that was very good. So I'll close the meeting at this stage, but if people could stay just to hear what Philip has to say after. I also want to thank everyone for their forbearance, really, for some of the technical issues that we've had. And this is I've had a number of WebEx meetings, but really this is the first public meeting I've chaired. So thank you for being patient with me as well. So I'd just like to thank Andrea and the rest of DSU for the help that they give. It's really useful. So thank you all very much. And if we close the meeting at this stage.
Okay, Nigel, can you kill the live link, please?
Might have to become on this one.
Is that Andrea, are we okay now?